Well, our speaker this afternoon is Gary McKechnie, and he's put his passion for American travel into action. As a member of the Society of American Travel Writers, he's a National Geographic author, lectures on American travel and history through the prestigious Insights series on the Cunard lines on the Queen Victoria and the Queen Mary II. He's the Off the Beaten Path a reporter for Visit Florida, has worked with Kawasaki, Yamaha, Suzuki, Honda, Harley, and BMW, and went on the road and created the Great American Motorcycle Tours, the best-selling motorcycle guidebook in America. With a background in advertising, when the most recent edition of his book was released, he wanted to make a special impact for sure. So he made certain that the motorcycle industry was represented in space. So he had his book tethered to a weather balloon, and with the help of a GoPro, cameras rolling, made it part of the world's first book launch. And here's a clip of that, and then we'll bring up Gary McKechnie to talk about his recent trip.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Everybody having a good time so far? Okay, well, I'll fix that. Okay, do we have some video? Here we go. We're going to talk today about the Cannonball Centennial Ride. And I found out about this last year at the AIM Expo. Tim Boucher said, Gary, when you're not writing books and riding motorcycles, what do you do? And I said, my wife and I, we have a bed and breakfast, so usually I'm taking orders from complete strangers and I'm scrubbing toilets. And he said, that's just the skill set we need. And so this spring, Tim gave me a call, and I didn't have a picture of Tim, but this is the one he sent me. I think that's how most of us see Tim. He gave me a call and he said, well, the Cannonball Centennial Ride is going to go from San Diego to New York City. And he wanted me to represent the Motorcycle Industry Council, which I thought was absolutely wonderful. And he said, here's what's going to happen. He said, you'll be riding a 2014 Yamaha Super Tenere. And I said, boy, what's not to love? And he said, you'll be riding with Don Emdy, the motorcycle legend. I said, you can't beat this. What really put it over the top for me, though, he said it would be clothing optional. And so that's a shot of me taken with my GoPro. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I started riding and then about the ride itself and what I learned and what I discovered, and hopefully it'll inspire you to look at motorcycling in a new way. Like most of you, I started out on a little mini bike. I graduated to a Yamaha 250, and I was really influenced by this guy. Does anyone know who this is, please? I'm sorry, say it a little louder. Evel Knievel, great, okay. The reason I asked, I did a presentation at the Motorcycle Mechanics Institute in Orlando, and most of the students were like in their late teens, early 20s. They didn't know who he was when they saw this picture. And one of the instructors there shouted, "You're dating yourself." And that was sort of rude. I dated myself a lot in high school, but I don't do it that much anymore. So my passion was when I was in my teens, I realized if I worked for somebody, I would get 2 weeks of vacation a year, which meant if you do the math, I'd have to work 26 years to get a year to myself. And that just didn't sit well with me. So I did everything I could to stay free, stay freelance, ride a motorcycle, do what I could to stay free. But eventually, I gradually sort of like drifted into cubicle world. I worked at an ad agency. I've been a freelance writer, and I was writing ad copy for senior centers and shopping malls, and I was really getting far away from what I loved. And my wife asked me, she said, "What is your passion?" And I gave her an honest answer. I said, "I don't know. I don't know what a passion is anymore." But I started thinking about it, and it was motorcycles. When I'm on a motorcycle, I'm happy. And so I started thinking, how could I be on a motorcycle again? How could I recapture that spirit that I had lost because I wanted to do everything that kept me free? And it was the motorcycle. And you'll see here, I think I'm preaching to the choir: adventure, freedom, exploration, discovery, awareness, memories, and just living and doing that. And so with the help of Croft Long and Jan Plessner and Ty Van Hooydonk and Robin McPeters over here, I went out and pitched a book about motorcycle touring across the United States, 25 back road tours, and they pitched in and helped me. I sent it out to 60 publishers, a query to 60 publishers. I got rejected by 60. The 61st was the one that got me there. And the motorcycle book came out, Great American Motorcycle Tours, now in its 5th edition, the one you saw launched into space. And I was really pleased when Road Bike Magazine called me the Mark Twain of motorcycling. Not that I approach Mark Twain, but he's just one of my favorite writers. So I think it was really that sort of passion that led Tim Boucher and Ty Van Hooydonk to invite me to represent you, the Motorcycle Industry Council, on the Cannonball ride. So let me start. Who was Cannonball, Irwin Cannonball Baker? If you don't know, Don Emdy is the man to talk to. He knows everything about Cannonball Baker. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version very quickly. In the early teens, early 1900s and early 19 teens and 20s, this guy was a marathon motorcycle rider, an endurance rider. And the challenge was that he could not ride his motorcycle from San Diego to New York City in 20 days. There were virtually no roads west of the Mississippi, so it was really a challenge. Adding to that challenge, he was on a 7-horsepower Indian motorcycle. But here was his route. So Don Emdy and Joe Colombero took about 2 years riding across the country, mapping this out, going to libraries and historical societies, and seeing, and you can see on the top, that was Cannonball's route, and this is the route that we took. So Cannonball's doing this without Google Maps, without GPS, without virtually anything. And we're just honored to try to match what Cannonball did 100 years ago. And Don being a stickler about this because he put so much time in it, well, I'll get to that in just a second. Let me tell you what I did. With my marketing and advertising background, I asked him, I said, what is my role? He said, well, promote motorcycling. You'll write blogs. You'll appear in video road reports. But I thought, hey, what if I do this? What if I write a proclamation that says, whereas Cannonball Baker exemplified the American spirit by riding his motorcycle across the United States, and whereas today's generation, that sort of thing. And I would send these proclamations out to all the cities that we would see across the United States. And that way, I figured the city council and the mayor would take a look at that. They'd want to get on the news. And so they'd create a proclamation like this and present it to Don and the riders when we got to their town, as they did in Greenville, Ohio. There's Don receiving the proclamation from the mayor there. So that was the plan. And so we had that set up in a few cities along the way. And again, Don didn't want much out of any of the Cannonball riders. Are there any Cannonball riders here today? I know Tom, just us, okay. We'll have a private meeting afterward, I suppose. Don's one thing, he wanted to leave at 9 o'clock, not 8:59, not 9:01. He wanted to leave at 9 a.m., just like Cannonball on May 3rd, 2014, 100 years to the minute that Cannonball left. And so 9 o'clock was drilled into everybody's head. And I remember, God, I was so nervous the night before, and I'm trying to sleep, and at 3 o'clock there's a knock on the door, and it's Don, and he's in his pajamas. He goes, we leave at 9, okay? Be ready. So he went back to his room, I went back to sleep. But at 9 o'clock the next morning, we were all lined up. There was about 150 riders in San Diego getting ready to ride. You can see that's me in the Schuberth helmet right here, the handsome guy. And I don't know who that guy is with the horns behind me. I think he dropped out after a quarter of a mile. He's really a weakling. But we took off, and I'm just going to give you a few highlights of this journey. I can't do it all. It would take 11 and a half days to tell you what we saw. But I'll tell you one of the neatest experiences when we were getting ready to go across Arizona in the Apache land. Pete Pfeiffer, I believe, was the gentleman who helped put the Arizona ride together. And he presented Don with the Apache blessing because we were going to go into their area. And Don read this to the whole group before we set out that day, and it was beautiful. And if you can't read it from where you are, may the sun bring you new energy by day. May the moon softly restore you by night. May the rain wash away your worries. May the breeze blow new strength into your being. May you walk gently through the world and know its beauty all the days of your life. That was a beautiful sentiment to depart that day. And when we got on the Apache Trail, I just wanted to show you a couple of pictures I took, because I'm from Florida. I don't see cactus very much. I guess you guys might see it here or in Arizona. But I ran across this, and I noticed an uncanny resemblance to Dolly Parton. And I realized, well, maybe it's not so much a cactus as a stactus. But you have a lot of time to think when you're on a motorcycle. But we're riding across New Mexico now. We get through the Apache land, and we're going towards Socorro, New Mexico. And this is about the landscape. And we stop in a town called Dattle, about 60 miles west of Socorro. And we're having lunch, or dinner rather, at the Eagle Guest Ranch Cafe. And it's about 5:30, and I'm just about to dig into my salad, and the whole group of riders is there. And I'm thinking, what is bugging me? Something's really bugging me. What is it? And I thought, we're supposed to be in Socorro at 5 o'clock. Before I left Florida and we started the ride in San Diego, I talked to the city manager in Socorro, and I told her, thinking that this was going to happen, all of the riders would be done with dinner in Dattle by 3:30. We would all be there at 5 o'clock for their city council meeting, and we would all accept the proclamation that I had arranged. And now it was 5:30. We had missed the city council meeting. I had completely forgotten about it. I have no cell phone coverage because we're out in the middle of nowhere. But what can we do? I tell Brian Hardiman, I said, we got to get going. We go out in the parking lot of the Eagle Guest Ranch Cafe, and we see this guy. That's Perry King, the Hollywood actor. He was been on Riptide, Gilmore Girls, I believe. And he's out in the parking lot, and you can see he's got a couple of zip ties by his feet, and he's holding a spoon he's stolen out of the restaurant. Why? Because his Ducati's kickstand is messing up, and he can't get the bike to stay up. So he's trying to tie a spoon to the bottom of it so he's got a little bit more height, which caused Brian to laugh at Perry King, star of TV's Riptide. He should have been star of MacGyver, I think. But anyway, so we get going, and I'm trying to cover that 60 miles as quickly as I can, and halfway through we get to SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. This is that big radio telescope thing, and I'm thinking if I had a piece of copper wire, maybe I could connect to one and make the phone call to Socorro and tell them, just forget it. We're not going to do it. But I just couldn't get any coverage, but what a cool experience that was. Then magic, part one. We get to Socorro in, I think, about 30, 35 minutes. Cover that 60 miles in about a half an hour. That bike is fast. Thank you, Yamaha. I really appreciate that. And I get to the first stoplight, and for the first time in about 5 hours, I've got cell phone coverage. And where I could not have heard my phone ring because I was on the bike, now I could hear it ring. It's in my pocket, and I open it up. I flip up the visor on the helmet. Hi, this is Gary. Gary, this is Sheila, the city manager. We're all waiting for you. And I said, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Everybody's back in Dattle. I'm the only one here. I said, we're running late. And she goes, well, we are walking over to the Capitol Bar, and we'll see you there. And I said, well, really, you can scrub this because this isn't going to happen because Don's back there, all the riders are back there. She goes, we'll see you at the Capitol Bar. It's a town's landmark. It's like your wife. My wife was, channeled through this woman. And so anyway, then I hear a sound. I hear the sound of a Ducati with a bad kickstand. Pulling up next to me is Perry King, star of TV's Riptide. And in his cool Hollywood actor voice, he pulls up and he goes, hey, man, what's going on? I said, oh, Perry, I said, I'm in a jam. I said, I forgot about this thing, and they want me to go accept the proclamation. And then I'm looking at this real handsome guy, and I said, well, wait a second. This guy played the president of the United States in a TV movie. Perry, can you come with me? Sure, man, let's go. He's like the Duff man. And so we get on the bikes and we go screaming down the street, and we go around the town square, and we see the mayor's set up, and they've got cameras set up, and the city council is there. And this is when the magic really happened. I figured when I got with the city manager, I said, hey, I didn't want to let the cat out of the bag, but, we could have brought all the riders, but that wouldn't have been, half as special as bringing a real, true-to-life Hollywood celebrity to your town, Socorro, New Mexico. All of a sudden, I said, this is Perry King, star of TV's Riptide. All of a sudden, all the ladies on city council and all the women who worked for the city of Socorro pushed me out of the way. Hey, Karen, get a picture of me with Perry King, star of TV's Riptide. And so they're all going up to him. He handled it so gracefully. And we all posed for the picture with the mayor when we got the proclamation. And you see this guy in the cowboy hat, that's Gordy Hicks. He's the vice mayor of Socorro. And we go inside for drinks afterwards, and we're sitting in the bar, and something's bothering Gordy. I can tell he's a little upset. And finally, he just puts down his beer, and he looks at Perry and goes, why the hell you got a spoon on your kickstand? And Perry explains it. He goes, damn it, that ain't right. That ain't right at all. He goes, come over to my barn. He goes, I've got an acetylene torch. I'm a welder. I can weld a new piece on your kickstand. And I've got a pal in the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and he said fewer than 1% of vice mayors in America have their own welding equipment. And it turns out Gordy Hicks was one of them. Magic part 2. We get to Dodge City, and I meet this gentleman, Yermo Lammers. He was riding his BMW across America. I don't know where he was headed, but when he's pumping up with gas in Dodge City, up come Robert Pandiana's Indian and Randy Aaron. Is that right? Randy Aaron. And they get together at this gas station, and they say, where are you headed? And Yermo says, I'm going to Colorado, I believe. And where are you guys headed? Well, we're going to New York City. We're part of the Cannonball Centennial Ride. Join us. Join us. And then Yermo did something that few of us would have the courage to do. He said yes. He said yes. That changed his life. No closes off any opportunity. No closes off any options you've got. Yes opens up every door. And so Yermo went up to Don and he said, may I join the ride? We're halfway across the country. May I join the ride? I'll pay my way. And Don said yes. And he said, thank you, Don. And Don said, don't thank me. Thank Robert. Robert Pandya vouched for you. And so Yermo goes over to Robert. He said, thank you very much. You vouched for me. Why? And Robert said, because you said yes. And as he's walking away, he turns back. It's like a movie scene. He turns back and he goes, yes is when the magic happens. And that is when the magic happens, when you say yes. And that was the epiphany for me when I learned that from Yermo. As we're riding across the country, I'm thinking, we're not doing this because we're just a bunch of people who say no or negative. The people on that ride, on the Cannonball Centennial Ride that Don created, said yes. We said yes to riding a motorcycle. We said yes to wanting more out of life. We said yes to loving nature, being outside, being on a motorcycle. And because we said yes, we were privileged to see things like this. Here are just a few scenes I want to show you from the ride. Sunset over the Colorado River in Yuma, Arizona. Meeting Ted Boyko and Casey, the guys who tuned up that motorcycle for me, made sure it was in perfect running condition all the way across America. En route to Agua Caliente, Brian and I shooting a video there. And by the way, back in 1914, this is about where Cannonball Baker was when his Indian ran out of gas. He had to push his motorcycle 5 miles across the desert to get to Agua Caliente. He was so dehydrated they had to pack him in ice to revive him. And still, he made it in 11 and a half days. And when you get to Agua Caliente today, it looks like the surface of Mars. This is the Pioneer Cemetery there. I was privileged I had a whiteboard, and I would write messages to my friends and post them on Facebook. And if you can't see this sign, it says, I am at work now, which pissed off a lot of my friends. They were at home in their cubicles. In Model, Colorado, I saw this. And Brian and I, we stayed there for about an hour. If you go to motorcycles.org and watch our videos, you'll see we shot a lot of video here. It's an empty place. It's a desolate place. But look at the sky. It's like this weird, very moody painting. And this was the center of commerce in Model, Colorado, and it's all gone now. All gone. And we just sat there. And you just felt the wind and watched the morning go by. And then in Dodge City, Kansas, you see these big grain silos, and they're like giant leviathans. They're huge, and the sky is big. And you could start to see America change as we rode east. And then the next morning, we're riding out of Dodge City, and you get this. It looks like one of those D-Day pictures that Robert Capa took. Back in 1944. It's just one of those mornings. None of this would have happened had we said no. Had we said, no, we're not going to go. Yes, we're going, and this is what we get to see. In Kansas City, Kansas, one of the most beautiful moments, the lock busted on one of the bags, and so all four of these guys pitched in to make it work. I'm not a mechanic. My toolkit, I've got a hammer and a fork. That's all I got. These guys worked on this for like a half hour, just like puzzling over how to fix that lock, that tumbler and that lock. And that's just the camaraderie that was taking place on this ride. Indianapolis, Indiana, Brian and I were shooting a video, and I saw this couple, and I asked, may I, just sort of a cheesy photo, may I? And so they let me pose with them. Beautiful couple, wonderful people. I heard they're divorced now. I think it's something I said. And then here's the 5 horsemen of the apocalypse coming through a covered bridge in Ohio. Just a great shot, just a beautiful shot. I think that ran in Motorcycle Magazine. This was something in eastern Ohio. A beer cave helps create miracles for local kids. I would have thought the same thing when I was a teenager. And then again, Brian and I found part of the national road that went from Maryland all the way into Illinois. And when I was on this road, on this brick road, which is off the main road, obviously, I looked at all of these bricks. Somebody had to dig up the dirt and the mud and pack it and bake it, and they had to strip out this land, and they had to place each brick. And 150, almost 200 years later, those bricks are still there. Those roads are still there. And that's what you can get when you ride a motorcycle. When you're on a bike, you can go and explore and find these things. If I was in a car, I would have taken that main road. I would have missed this entirely. In Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, I learned Abraham Lincoln is a fan of motorcycles, so you can use that in your next press release. But this was another part of magic. When we were riding into New York City, the group had never really been consistently together the whole time. And on the last morning going from Malvern, Pennsylvania into New York City to get to Battery Park by noon, we're all sort of broken up. Traffic on US 1 is cutting us off. People had to stop and get gas. But just after 10 o'clock, our little group of about 6, we come down in this hill, and we come up to the crest of the hill, and right in front of us is the Freedom Tower. We had made it. We had made it. More than 3,000 miles, no tickets, no fines, no accidents, clear weather. We were blessed, and we saw that. We knew we were getting close to the end of our ride. Yeah, I love this shot, a selfie I took as we were going there. But then New York threw us another curve. There was so much traffic there, delivery trucks and bicycles and all this madness in the Holland Tunnel. If anybody can figure out how to pack money away so you can pay a toll to get into a tunnel or across a bridge, you'll make $1 million. Because we got separated again. The whole group was being squeezed apart by the traffic of Manhattan. But then, magic part 3. Somehow, we were all split up. Some riders were miles ahead, but by the time we got to the last half a mile in Manhattan before Battery Park, you know what happened? Somehow, we get to a traffic light. Hey, there's a cannonballer. There's another cannonballer. There's another cannonballer. All of us were together at the same light, at the same time. That had never happened. We had gone through this sort of dense traffic, and we all ended up here at the same time. Battery Park, Statue of Liberty. If you'd like to applaud for that, you're welcome to. Isn't that something? Boy, I get chills thinking about this. And just being able to look at the Statue of Liberty. And when I look back at this picture, I realize this is symbolic of your entire industry, the whole motorcycle industry membership. You guys come from different backgrounds. You have, I don't know the politics of these people. I don't know mostly what they did when they were kids. Somehow we all came together. It was this confluence of this passion for motorcycles and motorcycling. And it happened because we said yes. And to conclude, what I'd like to point out is what you do best is you say yes. You add yes back to the vocabulary of people. And life is a one-way journey. We all start in the same place. We all end up in the same place. But when you're on a motorcycle, that journey is a lot better. And when you make a product, whether it's a rain suit, mirrors, tires, a helmet, boots, gloves, a jacket, or the motorcycle itself, you're making a component piece that somebody's going to use to say yes. Because they're going to be looking at a motorcycle, and they might be working on an assembly line, and they're thinking, you say if I ride that thing, I can go anywhere I want in America. And you say yes. And you say, I ride that motorcycle, and I can reclaim my life again. I can reignite that passion that I once had. And you say yes. And you start building their dreams. They want to feel empowered to do something. They want to live. They don't want to exist. And because of what you make, again, whether you make any part, piece, or the entire motorcycle, or you represent the whole motorcycle culture, you add the word yes back into the vocabulary of people who don't have it. People who say no just out of habit because they can't have those things. They can't do those things. You give them an opportunity. Motorcycling is a green light. On a motorcycle, there are no stop signs. All of us in this room, if we ride or don't ride, we're engaged in life, and we get to do things because we have a passion for it. And once you get that passion, you want to feed it again. And I would argue that the very best way to feed it is getting on a bike, promoting your industry, making sure you do whatever you can to get more people engaged and to remind them that they don't have to sit in a cubicle. They don't have to defer their dreams, that they can get back on the road. They can do what Don and myself and all the other cannonballers did, ride across the nation and rediscover America. And if you'd like to see the videos and the blogs that we created as we rode from San Diego to New York City, just go to motorcycles.org. But I don't want you to do that too long, because I'm going to leave you with this one final suggestion. After you get done watching all that stuff online and sharing it with your friends, just get off the laptop and get on the blacktop. Okay, fair deal? Okay, just say yes, all right? Okay, with that, I'd like to share with you another video to sort of put the Cannonball Ride in perspective. It's about 4 or 5 minutes, and it's interviews with some riders. And you'll see how the Cannonball Centennial Ride had the magic to inspire long-term riders, motorcycle legends, and you'll see how it all came together. So Lee, if you'd like to run that video, thank you very much for your time, and if you'd like to chat, I'd love to talk with you all later. Thank you. The Cannonball Centennial Ride begins tomorrow, Saturday, May 3rd, 2014, 100 years to the minute since Cannonball Baker took off from this very same city. We're going to go from here all the way to New York City, 3,000 plus miles. Wow, we started in San Diego, and then we rode through every type of terrain. Right after we left San Diego, we got out into the countryside where, man, we were zipping and turning and going on all these twisties through places like Mountain Spring. So it was all types of terrain, from sea level to 4,000 feet, back down to sea level again. That was one of the best parts of the ride. I mean, just up and down, around corners, and coming out to these fantastic vistas with that golden grass spreading out all the way to the horizon. That was one of the best parts of the day.
At a pretty young age, I had little motorcycle trail bikes, and it just kind of came natural in our family, with my dad being already having a whole career in motorcycling.
Well, I always wanted to ride a motorcycle, but my father wouldn't let me. I was the only girl in the family in 150 years, and they didn't know what to do with a girl.
I just had an interest in the motorcycles from then on, and always wanted to ride one. And I don't tell my brother this, but my parents would go out dancing on Thursday nights, and Ralph would be gone. And when he was riding for Harley, he had a Harley Sprint street bike. Just go out in the garage. I finally figured out how to start that thing up, and next thing I knew, I was riding it around the cul-de-sac. I'm surprised the neighbors didn't say something. It keeps me busy. It gives me something to do. I'm retired now, so I have the time to do it. And while I can still do it, I'm going to.
It's just a sense of freedom. You look at the whole world different. You smell the smells as you're rolling down the road. You hear the noises different. You see different things, and it's just a very soothing, relaxing thing that also provides a little bit of an adrenaline rush from time to time.
The freedom, and especially for a woman, it's just incredible freedom. When I first started, there weren't that many women riding, believe it or not, only 20 years ago. But now it's just gotten to be huge.
When you're on a bike, you just feel like you're part of nature. You're part of America. And this happens all the way from San Diego to New York City. And remember, if you don't ride now, don't worry. Just sign up for the Motorcycle Safety Foundation's Basic Rider course. It is the best first ride you'll ever take.
We took the motorcycle safety course, and within 2 weeks I was down in Mexico riding non-roads over the mountains in Mexico, and that was pretty crazy. But if you want to do it, just do it. That's the fun part.
The experience of riding motorcycles is about being open and having possibilities presented you would never imagine.
We just rode in from Dodge City, Kansas to Kansas City, Kansas, a distance of about 330 miles. The highlight of my day, in addition to seeing the windmills on this open plain, was when Don Emdy told me on Highway 40, we were on the exact same road Cannonball Baker himself rode 100 years ago. And I started thinking about the motivation of motorcyclists. I think for motorcyclists in general, it's just the art of travel.
It's an integral part of my life. I ride almost every day. I commute to work. On Saturdays or Sundays, try to find somebody to get up and go for a 100, 150 mile breakfast run.
I absolutely love it. I mean, any excuse to stay on the road longer. I mean, for me, the saddest moment of the trip is the return trip.
Love it. I love it if I can do it all the time, but we only get a few really long trips in every couple of years.
The more time I'm on the bike, the happier I am.
Oh man, it's day 11 and a half and I can't believe it. I'm in New York City, as you can tell by the Statue of Liberty right behind me, and in front of me, Manhattan. More than 3,000 miles across the country, and we arrived in Battery Park around noon today on May 14th, 2014, 100 years to the day since Cannonball Baker was right here. I've got to thank the members of the Motorcycle Industry Council for sponsoring this trip, because I saw things I never expected to see, and I wish this ride could go on forever. Now, we've been following Cannonball's trail for the last week and a half. Now it's up to you. Start planning your own voyage of discovery. Start mapping out your own trips. And I hope very much to see you on the road.
Gary McKechnie, thank you very much. And members, this year, the 100th anniversary, I took a trip to Italy at the invitation of Pier Francesco Cagliari, the head of the ASIM and AICMA. I'm sorry, ASIM, excuse me, ANCMA and AICMA, and his primary focus is this show. And he wanted me to come over and see their 100th. And it was a 39th floor, wonderful dinner overlooking Milan. Beautiful artwork commissioned by Italian artists. We took a small investment, and through your membership dues, we hosted Gary McKechnie. That's it. Hotels. We put Brian on the road, Brian Hardiman, kind of toward the end, and said, you know, this isn't working out being in the chase vehicle. Can I rent a car? Rent a car. We did things along the way. You backtracked 3 hours to get a Apple MacBook Pro reconditioned and salvaged a lot. But we wanted to document that what we sell are the experiences that occur when you say yes. Hardware, we love it. The latest, greatest, it fascinates us all. It tempts us all, and we want you to keep doing that. Make great motorcycles. It's even better when you're on a great motorcycle. But the fact is, any motorcycle will give you those experiences. And aftermarket members, we tried to feature a number of brands. You were certainly represented amongst Don's group, and you can be proud of that. You make the experiences even better. You make them safer with the gear. We wanted to kind of figure out how to wrap up the 100th, the first 100 years. Let's call them done. Let's remember them from time to time. I'm afraid the staff knows I don't worry too much about yesterday. Our focus is the moment, and it's tomorrow. So let's focus on the next 100. We hope you enjoyed your cupcake. We have no art. We have no cool stuff. We're going to take a 10-minute break and come back to hear Pat Murphy introduce David this afternoon. And I got to tell you, if you like economics, if you like infographics, if you like information that might change your world, I think you'll stick around. It's kind of the hybrid of what we saw this morning. You're going to see some demand curves. You're going to see some interactivity in a way that you don't normally see it. We're totally excited about this afternoon. So please, quick 10-minute break, come right back in and we'll get back to work. Thanks a lot.